Assalamu alaikum YouTube viewers. The topic of today's video is difference between the intensive and extensive properties. So, what are the intensive properties? Intensive properties are actually those properties that do not depend upon the amount of matter. Means if you take a small amount of matter and if you take a large amount of matter, then the property will be same for both of these samples. Okay? So, what are such properties? The first of the example of the intensive property is the pressure. So, why pressure is the intensive property? As you can see that pressure is the force per unit area. Okay, the pressure is force per unit area, and if you take a larger amount of matter, what does it mean? It means that you have a larger area and the force also increases accordingly. So if you take small amount of matter, then there will be some pressure, and if you take a large amount of matter, then there will also be some pressure, and the pressure in both of these cases will be the same. Similarly, temperature. So let's take an example of temperature. If you have a jug, the temperature of the water in the jug is 25 degrees C, and you fill a glass of water from that jug, then the glass of water, the water in present within the glass will also have the temperature equal to 25 degrees C. So I can say that the temperature is independent of the amount of matter. Similarly, if I talk about pressure, if I have a jug that contains water, the pressure will be, some pressure will be exerted on the jug, and if I place this water into a glass, what happens? The pressure that will exerted by the water on the walls of the glass will be the same as that of the pressure that will be exerted by the water on the walls of the jug. Okay, so pressure is also the intensive property, temperature is also the intensive property. Talking about the density, density is also an intensive property. How density is intensive? Because it is actually mass per unit volume. If you increase the mass, then the volume is also increased. Okay, so the density remains constant. For example, if you have a jug of water, the density will be 1 gram per cm cube, and similarly if you have a glass of water, then in that case the density will again be 1 gram per cm cube. So the next thing is concentration, and concentration is also an intensive property as it is independent of the amount of matter you take. Okay, so melting point, boiling point, surface tension, viscosity, all of these are the intensive property. Talking about viscosity, if you take small amount of honey and if you take a large amount of honey, the viscosity of both of these samples will be the same. So these are all the intensive properties. Similarly, melting and boiling point, if you take a small amount of water and if you take a large amount of water, the boiling point and melting point will be same. The boiling point will be 100 degrees C and the melting point will be 0 degrees. And talking about the extensive properties, so what are extensive properties? Extensive properties are actually those properties that do not depend upon the amount of matter present. Okay, extensive properties are independent of the amount of the matter. So examples are mass. For example, if you take a small amount of something and if you take a large amount of something, the large amount will have more mass as compared to the small amount. For example, if you take small amount of sugar and if you take a large amount of sugar, the large amount of sugar will have more mass. Similarly, talking about the volume, if you take small amount of something, the volume will be lower. If you take the large amount of that thing, then the volume will be more. Similarly, internal energy is also an extensive property as it depends upon the matter. The lesser substance, the lesser the substance, the lesser will be the internal energy, and if you have a more substance, then the internal energy will be great. So heat capacity is also another type of extensive property. Enthalpy, entropy, Helmholtz energy, Gibbs energy, all of these are the extensive properties as they all depend upon the amount of the matter that is present in the sample, that is present in the substance. So this is the main difference between the intensive property and extensive property. So inshallah, see you in the next video. If you have any question, you can ask in the comments. Thank you and Allah Hafiz.